Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends. I just wanted to take a couple minutes to talk a little bit about my memories of starting out the game and playing casual kitchen table style Magic, and give you a deck list for one of the decks that still is fond in my memory and fond in my heart from those days. So this video is actually a response to a video Milo the Gathering put out there, and awesome idea. Thank you for putting this out. I think this is an awesome thing to talk about because in today's day of net decking and all this competitive Magic talk and market talk, sometimes you forget about just how much fun the game used to be when it was simple, before cards were worth hundreds of dollars, before you kind of knew everything that was coming out when a set came out, before you knew even which card was rare or which card was uncommon. So when I first started playing Magic, I had a card store that I was able to play at, which a lot of people didn't have back in the early days of Magic. And I also had a group of friends that played Magic as well, and we'd play over at their houses a lot of times on Friday night or on the weekends, and we'd play at the card store sometimes in the afternoon when we got out of school or out of our classes in college, which could be pretty early in the day. So I have a lot of fond memories of going out there playing with these random decks. You played with whatever cards you had, you threw them together, and you didn't have the ability to go out there and seek out a lot of cards because the product was hard to find in the old days. Even if it wasn't super expensive, sometimes you just couldn't find the cards you were looking for. But you'd go out, you trade with people, you do what you do to build up your deck and make it better, and over time it became stronger and more solidified, and that's kind of what I miss. Today I can just net deck, build a deck, try to learn how to play it, go out to a major tournament, and maybe even win some money in a Grand Prix. It wasn't like that in the old days, but what you did have was just a stronger sense of, I guess, maybe ownership and pride in something you built and something that is competitive, at least in your local meta game. And you don't always feel that way anymore, at least I don't. Sometimes Commander, though, is a good way to, in today's environment, do that, or Cube as well. You get to play with the cards that you love. So having said that, let me show you a deck that, not my first deck that I ever played, but a deck that means a lot to me, and the cards in it still mean a lot to me. First off, I had 4 copies of Clone. You'll see why in just a second. I had 3 Combat Medics. This was a common from Fallen Empire, and it was just a very good way to make combat much more difficult for your opponent. I had a copy of Ghost of Dirk. Let me tell you why. When Fallen Empires came out, so many people just gravitated to the Merfolk deck, which was all about Island Walk. So there's a point where my local store, my friends, probably about 3/4 of the decks you played against were Merfolk Island Walk decks. So this card helped combat that. Hand of Justice. I've talked about this in a previous episode of This Week in Magic the Gathering, but quickly, I had 4 copies of this, probably my favorite card of all time in Magic. Most people probably haven't even heard of it, but it was just so powerful in its day. Nowadays, it's not very good, obviously, but for 6 mana, you'd get a 2/6, could block pretty much almost any creature that was printed at that time, and it did something white just up to that point just could never do before. It just could be more aggressive and go out there and deal with threats. White was more of a support color for blue typically in the early days of Magic, but cards like this started to make it a little more aggressive and allowed you to build around that color. So that's part of the reason I really love this deck. On top of that, look at the quote. I mean, this is incredible. Look at the artwork. Look at this mustache. That mustache is incredible. You don't see that on cards today. You're not going to see a mustache like that today. Vacation Town, we had 2 of these, and again, just making combat difficult. Mesa Pegasus, we had 4 of these, and again, with banding, makes combat more convoluted for your opponent. And now you start to see some of the flyers in the deck, or the larger flyers. Phantom Monster, we had 4 of those, cheap, big flyer. Samite Healer, 2 of those, again, to make combat difficult. And here's the centerpiece of the deck. It was 4 Sarah Angels. Sarah Angel, okay card today, super powerhouse in the old days. Not a lot of cards that could deal with this creature getting up in the air and not tapping when it attacks. And being able to clone Sarahs, sometimes that alone was game. Vacation Town, this comboed very obviously from Fallen Empires with Hand of Justice, and nowadays we got a lot better ways to do this, cards like Lingering Souls, but back in the old days this was your best way to get a bunch of small white creatures. Source of Plowshares was actually the only sorcery instant or enchantment I had in the deck. I had 4 of those, and this was to deal with other flyers so I could get across, or deal with combo threats like Icy Manipulator, Royal Assassin situations. Now into artifacts. We had a Helm of Chatzook, again just to give another creature banding, make combat more difficult. And yep, I had a Mox Pearl, and yep, I sure did shuffle it with no sleeves, and as everybody did back in the old days. And I also had a Mox Sapphire, shuffled it a lot with no sleeves. Soul Ring basically was an auto include back in those days in every deck. It just accelerated your mana. Now, as I mentioned before, I was up against all these Island Walk decks, and at some point I had to take the islands out of this deck, so I had to find other sources of blue. I even had some Tundras at the time, but I had to remove those. So Sand Silos is slow, but it's blue mana, and it's not an island. 4 Sevelonite Temples, and again, it was blue mana, a little slower, but no islands. And I also had a Teleria, which I don't think I ever used that second ability. I don't know if anyone's ever used that second ability. If you did, put in the comments below. I'd love to know. But this was just another way to get blue mana. And finally, we had 14 planes. So I hope this gives you some idea of what it was like playing Magic back in the old days. You know, it wasn't all about power and strategies, and it's very difficult even today to go back in your mind to those days because we just have so much information and also so many cards to choose from. And cards are so easy to get nowadays too, as long as you can trade or have a little bit of cash to get the cards you want. But having said that, hey, as always, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day.
Hey, thanks as always for watching. This video, like all my videos, was made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Even a donation of $1 helps me to keep growing this community and creating better quality videos for all of you. Check out our Patreon page for exclusive giveaways and future goals for the channel. If you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the MTG news, spoilers, set reviews, product openings, or finance videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a good day.